Down in Fannet, long ago, lived Jamie Freel and his mother. Jamie was the widow's only support. His strong hands worked tirelessly for her, and each Saturday night he placed his wages in her lap, thanking her kindly for the few coins she returned to him for tobacco. He was praised by everyone as the best son ever known. But there were other neighbors nearby, ones Jamie had never seen, who were rarely visible to mortal eyes except on special nights like May Eve or Halloween. An old, ruined castle, about a quarter of a mile from his cottage, was said to be the home of the wee folk. Every Halloween, its ancient windows glowed with light, and people passing by saw tiny figures flitting to and fro, while the air was filled with the sound of pipes and flutes. Everyone knew the fairies held their celebrations there, but no one dared to intrude. Jamie often watched from a distance, listening to their charming music and wondering what the inside of the castle was like. But one Halloween, he stood up suddenly and said to his mother, "I'm going to the castle to seek my fortune." "What?" cried she. "Would you go there? You, my only son? Don't be so reckless, Jamie. Something bad might happen to you, and what would become of me?" "Never fear, mother," he said. "No harm will come to me, but I must go." So off he went. As he crossed the potato field, he saw the castle ahead, its windows blazing with golden light that made even the autumn leaves glow like fire. From the grove beside the ruin, he could hear laughter, singing, and dancing. Inside, dozens of little people, none taller than a child of 5, whirled in circles to lively music while others feasted and drank. "Welcome, Jamie Freel! Welcome, welcome, Jamie!" cried the fairies when they saw him. The word welcome echoed from every corner of the castle. Time passed quickly, and Jamie was having the time of his life when one of the fairies said, "We're going to travel to Dublin tonight to bring back a young lady. Will you come too, Jamie Freel?" "Eh, that will I," said Jamie, eager for adventure. A troop of small horses stood waiting. Jamie mounted one, and before he knew it, the steed rose into the air. He was flying high above his mother's cottage, surrounded by the fairy riders. They swept over mountains and valleys, across Lough Swilly, over towns and villages, where people were lighting fires, roasting nuts, and celebrating Halloween. They flew across all of Ireland before reaching Dublin. "This is Derry!" cried the fairies as they passed its cathedral spire. The name was repeated by 50 small voices. "Derry! Derry! Derry!" So it went with every town, until at last the voices chimed, "Dublin!" The fairies landed beside one of the grand houses in St. Stephen's Green. Inside, Jamie saw a beautiful young lady asleep on a pillow in a splendid room. The fairies gently lifted her and carried her away, leaving behind a magical likeness that looked just like her resting in the bed. Each fairy took a turn carrying the sleeping lady, passing her from one to another as they journeyed homeward. Jamie, seeing this, said, "You've all had your turns. Why shouldn't I carry her for a little while?" "Eh, Jamie," replied they kindly, "you may take your turn." Jamie held her tightly as they neared his own house. Then, pretending to adjust his hold, he dropped gently down beside his mother's door. "Jamie Freel! Jamie Freel! Is that the way you treat us?" cried the fairies landing nearby. But Jamie held fast, though the lady changed into many strange shapes. A black dog barking, a glowing iron bar, a heavy sack of wool, yet still he would not let go. Finally, the tiniest of the fairies exclaimed, "Jamie Freel has taken her from us, but he shall not find it easy. I'll make her silent and unable to hear." She threw something light as dust toward the girl, and then the fairies vanished into the night. Jamie opened the door and went inside. "Jamie, lad," cried his mother, "you've been gone all night. What happened to you?" "Nothing bad, mother," said he. "I've brought home good fortune. Look, a beautiful young lady for company." The poor mother stared in amazement. At last she said, "A lady, Jamie. How can a lady live our simple way?" "She'll be better here than back there with the fair folk," said Jamie firmly. The girl stood silent by the hearth, shivering in her thin clothes. "Poor creature," said the old woman softly. "She's beautiful indeed. No wonder they wanted her." She fetched her best gown and stockings, even her special white linen garments she had set aside long ago. These she gladly gave to the trembling visitor, who allowed herself to be dressed, then sat quietly by the fire with her face in her hands. Jamie promised to care for her, and he did. The girl remained gentle and graceful, though she never spoke or heard. Over time, she learned their ways, feeding the pig, tending the hens, and knitting warm socks. A year passed. When Halloween came again, Jamie said, "Mother, I'm off to the old castle once more to seek my fortune." "Are you mad, Jamie?" cried she. "Surely they'll harm you for what you did last year." But Jamie only smiled and went his way. When he reached the castle, he saw the lights shining bright again. He crept close and heard the fairies talking. "That was a poor trick Jamie Freel played us when he carried away the young lady," said one. "Aye," said the small woman, "and I punished him. She sits speechless by his hearth. Yet if he knew that 3 drops from this glass could restore her hearing and voice." Jamie's heart leapt. He rushed into the hall and was greeted with cheers. "Welcome again, Jamie Freel." When the little woman offered him the glass to drink from, he snatched it and ran. He never remembered how he reached home, but soon he was by the fire, breathless. His mother cried, "Jamie, you've been hurt this time for sure." "No, Mother, better luck than ever," he said, and carefully gave the young lady 3 drops from the glass. At once she began to speak. Her first words were words of gratitude. The 3 of them talked joyfully by the fire until morning. Soon the lady asked for paper and ink, wishing to write to her father in Dublin. She sent letter after letter, but none were answered. At last she said, "Jamie, you must come with me to Dublin to find my father." Though they were poor, they set out on foot and at last reached the grand house in Stephen's Green. When the servant opened the door, the lady said, "Tell my father his daughter has returned." "The master has no daughter," said the servant kindly. "His only daughter went missing more than a year ago." "Please let me see him," she pleaded. The gentleman came, and she said, "Dear father, don't you know me?" "How dare you call me that?" he said sternly. "My daughter was lost long ago." "Look at this ring," she said, showing it to him. "Your name and mine are engraved inside." He stared astonished. "It is indeed her ring, but how came you by it?" "Call my mother," she said gently. "She will know me." The lady of the house arrived, and at first she, too, did not believe, until the girl showed a small mark on her neck. Then her mother cried out, "Yes, my Gracie had a mark just like that." They embraced, and Jamie told the whole story, how the fairies had taken her, how he brought her back, and how she had lived with them ever since. The family welcomed Jamie with joy and gratitude. In time, the young lady would not let him go back home alone. "If Jamie goes, I'll go too," she said. "He saved me and cared for me. If not for him, we would never have been reunited." And so her father said that Jamie should become his son-in-law. Jamie's mother was brought from Fannet in a fine coach, and there was a grand wedding. They all lived together happily ever after, and Jamie Freel, the brave Donegal lad, was remembered for generations to come.